All right, guys. Hello and welcome to Recency Bias, a podcast on the Fight Night Picks Podcast Network. I'm John Franklin. I'm joined as always by Hot Take Kate from SophistiKated MMA. Kate, how are you?
I'm doing great, John. How are you?
I'm doing great. I feel like you always react to that, like you forget that you're Hot Take Kate until I say it. Like you're like, oh, that's right.
Because you paused a little bit on the hot, and I'm like, they know that that's just like you're not just sitting there going, "This chick's hot." Like, hot take is the
emphasizing
qualifier.
There we go. All right, Kate. Let's take the victory lap here. Things are going well in the Hot Take Kate fight world as fighters who you stand for.
Not last night. Oh my God.
It's time to take a victory lap. Let's talk about Calvin Kattar.
Yes.
All right, so Calvin Kattar got a unanimous decision victory over Dan Ige. He looks like he is primed to enter the top 5. Not quite at a title shot yet, but he looks like he's primed to enter the top 5. Things are going well for Kattar. You are a fan of Kattar's work. All things Kattar. So take your victory lap. What'd you see? What'd you like? What are you excited about?
I love this kid's boxing. Just love it. I think that the only hiccup that he's had so far in the last couple of years was when he fought Zabit and just like couldn't quite get it going. But the way he looked against Ige last night and Stevens, I mean, 2020 is his year, man. And I do have to say that after his fight with Stevens, I said to his coach, I'm like, he needs to fight Ortega. Like that's the next fight I want to see. But then of course he got this last fight with Ige. But now I've seen at least 3 different media outlets calling for Kattar v. Ortega. And I just want to say, called it.
The victory lap continues. So I would say that, I was talking to Cameron about this fight, and Dan Ige I fall into this trap, which is I can be prejudiced when it comes to fighters in the sense that I look at them and I go, this guy looks like this guy I watched 100 years ago, and that guy ended up doing this. So I want to get your take on this, because when I look at Dan Ige and I hear some of the things he does like outside the cage, in terms of like maybe fighter representation or building a brand or a business, I get the vibe that this guy's just an overachiever, right? He doesn't really look the part. He doesn't really, I don't know. I can't really wrap my head around it. He just doesn't seem like a guy that's a championship fight. Now, that's not me taking, I guess it's me taking away from Calvin Kattar's performance, but I guess my point is that he had a nice strategy and he kind of was working this Ige. I mean, Kattar likes to counterpunch. Ige wasn't really allowing him to do that.
Yeah.
Do you think that this was just Calvin Kattar saying, I can perform in a big spot, which is all eyes on me, main event, and yet my real test is going to come from a guy like you said, Brian Ortega? Mm-hmm. Or do you think Dan Ige presented some interesting problems for him?
I think the point that Calvin proved is that it doesn't matter his opponent. He's going to touch you up regardless. Like he's going to figure, like it was, I want to say it was a couple minutes into the second round, you started really seeing that he was finding his range. And while Ige was throwing some pretty big shots, he wasn't throwing up as many. So in the end, it was, Calvin just outboxed him. I think that he takes a different approach to every opponent that he steps in there with, because he's never looked exactly the same against anyone. I mean, it was definitely like when he fought Stevens, he was out for Stevens' head. Like you could tell, like that was his objective, was to just take him out. And not last night, it's too many fights, man. On Wednesday, it looked a little bit more strategic. You know what I mean? Ige, I mean, he's a vet. I mean, I don't think that there was anything wrong with his performance. He just didn't quite do enough. And that's really all I saw.
All right, so again, let's continue the victory lap. Tell me who you have interviewed so far on the Sophisticated MMA channel.
I had Justin James after his big bonus win, and I had a little, I can't call him little, he's actually pretty big, featherweight by the name of Grant Dawson, although he's fought at lightweight as well.
Okay, so it's a little bit unfair to say that fighters are undefeated since they've talked to you, because you talked to Justin James after.
I talked to Justin James after. However,
but they are 2-0.
Hang on, though. I did talk to Jimmie Rivera, and we were going to sit down and talk, but idiot me did not quite factor in what the time difference was and when he would be sleeping. I just figured, if I'm awake and he's awake, it'll work out. Right. And it was like, oh no, I'll be sleeping at that time. And I'm going, gosh, dang it. So I would have had him on, and he had a big win.
Right.
So I don't know.
So you could theoretically be a good luck charm.
I could.
You could be.
But I don't want to say that, because I feel like as soon as you say that, then you become a jinx, and I don't need to be a jinx for anybody. I like all of these guys.
At least you got your karma in check. That's good. So let's talk about Grant Dawson, because you interviewed him, and then listen, guys. We're gonna jump over between both fights, or both cards, I should say, and sort of hash this out. So let's talk about Grant Dawson, because you had him on, which was a great interview. You should definitely listen to it. What'd you see? I mean, I saw a guy with a lot of control time. I saw a pretty dominant fighter.
Oh yeah.
What'd you see?
I mean, I loved that. I loved that he. Okay, so in his interview, he actually explained that he's one of the few fighters that started with MMA. Like, that was his, competing in MMA was ultimately his goal. But he went and did wrestling in high school in order to further that goal. But he was a pretty accomplished wrestler. And I love seeing wrestlers actually using that skill set, because the story is that for a lot of wrestlers, once they enter MMA, they really fall in love with the striking. They want to stand and bang. And I love that he still utilizes that skill set, not just to get a fighter to the ground, but to threaten it as well. Like, don't come too close or I'll get you. I saw him having a lot of fun in there as well. Those flying knees. I mean, you can tell who his coach is for sure. I think he looked just really composed and focused the whole time. Just no doubt in his mind from the second he walked in there until the second he finished that he was winning that fight.
Thanks for having me as a part of the show at Craig Allen FNP. And listen, I'm really looking forward to this. We've got a great partnership that we've struck with Ringside Beer. Some awesome merch over on their site. They've got some really cool tap handles. I got the MMA glove tap handle. I got the boxing glove tap handle for their lagers. And listen, I couldn't believe that this was the introductory offer that they have to just our viewers with Fight Night Picks. But if you use the promo code FNP at checkout, ringsidebeerstore.com, you get 25% off your order. They've got some awesome merch over there. They want you to get in the ring with Ringside Beer. We're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff with those guys, so make sure you check them out, ringsidebeerstore.com. And as always, like we like to say with Fight Night Picks, let's get into it.
All right, so since we got the Hot Take Kate orbit out of the way, let's focus on the Ige card, Kattar Ige card, and just sort of run things down, because there was some stuff here that stood out to me, and this is recency bias, so we might as well get our hot takes out on things that may only exist in the night they occurred, but we can extrapolate into something more than they have to be. Jimmie Rivera beats Cody Stamann. I thought this was just a professional fight from a professional fighter. He's a guy that was like the John Fitch of bantamweight, where he's just up near the top forever and just kind of, this guy you thought should get a fight, didn't get the fight. In terms of the title shot, are we seeing the decline of Jimmie Rivera, or do you think? Listen, he's got 4 losses, and the losses are to like Petr Yan, Aljamain Sterling, yeah,
Rice.
You know what I'm saying? It's not like he's losing to bums here. He's losing to the next.
Right.
I'm listing contenders for the bantamweight title.
Right.
That all have to be his losses. I wanted to see more from Stamann here. I obviously didn't get it. But what do you think about Jimmie Rivera? Take away the fact that you almost interviewed him and may interview him in the future. Do you think we've seen his best days?
I don't think so. I think that there are some fighters that get better with experience because they have such a great fight IQ that, you know, they've got all the tools at their disposal, but they just continue to learn and continue to evolve. And what I saw against Cody was that he walked in there and he's like, all right, I'm going to take your game. I'm going to break it down and I'm going to beat you at it. And he did. It was just like you said, it was an experienced fighter showing his experience in those moments.
All right, I'm going to do something that's going to be pretty impressive. If you host podcasts, if you don't host podcasts, it won't mean nothing to you. But I'm going to discuss both cards simultaneously, figuring out how to find some connectivity between the two of them. So let's talk about.
Oh
Taila.
boy!
I know, you'll see. You'll be impressed. Taila Santos defeated Molly McCann, who defeated Ariana Lipski, who fought on the other card. So my question is, when we look at these two fights, can we look at Taila Santos and, I mean, is Molly McCann some sort of a bar that you can determine who's what? Because listen, Ariana Lipski came over from KSW. She was the flyweight champ over there. She lost to JoJo Collarwood, and then she also lost to, the other name escapes me, but I'll find it. And then now here Taila Santos comes in and dominates her. Can we take – I want to talk about this as a whole in the sense that MMA math is the worst, and I won't ask you to do it.
Yeah.
But can we take something from these fights, or is it all like, hey, they're on Fight Island and it's all crazy anyway? They're fighting in the morning. They're sleeping. Is the whole thing crazy? Or when you see the way Santos performed, and we can give props to Lipski too. She found a knee bar and shredded that girl's, ligaments.
That girl was violent.
Right. But
my gosh.
When you look at these two fights, do you feel good about flyweight? Do you think these girls are miles away from the champions? Like, what's your takeaway from these fights?
I don't know if I'd say miles away, but it's very difficult for me to compare anybody, to even think about anybody against Shevchenko right now. Not just because she's already proven that she's far and away the best flyweight, but because in every single time we see her fight, we see something different. And we go, oh my gosh, she's improved her ground game. Oh my gosh, those kicks, she just gets better and better every time. So even though there might be some contenders that are closing the gap a little bit, she just continues on. So it's hard. It's very hard for me to make any sort of predictions against her. But I will say that I am happy to see more and more really high level fighters entering the division. I think for a long time, the argument was made that most of the women who were in the UFC didn't necessarily belong there. The skill level wasn't quite there yet. And that's why, that's why people like Nunes and Shevchenko can just clean out their entire division and then there's nothing for them. But I think what we're starting to see, and I think what we will see in the next few years, is a much, much larger talent pool. So that's what I'm excited about, is that we're actually starting to see a lot more, as opposed to, oh gosh, what on earth do we throw at the champion? There's no one left.
And I think the thing I like about her is that she is who she is, and she knows that she likes to strike, and she that's her preference. But she also, listen, guys, Amanda Nunes is a comet. Like she's something that does not come around every day. So to say that because she has victories over Shevchenko, it has something to do with Shevchenko is ridiculous, because Amanda Nunes is the best women's fighter ever. And maybe there ever will be.
One of the best fighters ever. Like,
period,
let's not even divide it. She is far and away one of the best fighters we've ever seen.
But to take away from Shevchenko because of losing to Nunes is crazy to me. So, I mean, when we say that, I like the fact that she's as far ahead of her division as she is, and she continues to evolve. That's what I appreciate about her.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about Molly McCann for a second, because, and you're going to hate this, but you need to straighten me out on this. Can I just step away from fighting for a second and just say I am not sexist. I'm not misogynistic. I have a dog. Like, I mean, I'm everything for the most part that you would want a normal, nice man to be. Can I just hate the fact that a woman calls herself Meatball? Can I just hate that in 2020? Her nickname is Meatball.
You're totally allowed.
Of all the things to call yourself, can I just hate that she calls herself that?
You're allowed to. I mean,
I feel like I need to be signed off on by the opposite gender for this.
No, God, there have been more than one people. People have on occasion called me a misogynist, so I'm not sure I'm the best measuring stick.
Way to undercut my endorsement. How dare you? I was so close to getting endorsed, and then you just pulled the rug out from under me. I would like to think, I would just like to think that at least you could introduce yourself as your nickname, and everybody would still be like, if someone met you and you just decided for some reason to say, "Hi, I'm Hot Take Kate," they'd be like, "Okay, nice to meet you, Hot Take Kate." It's kind of a weird thing to introduce yourself as, but nice to meet you.
Yeah.
If a woman walked up to me and said, "Hey, nice to meet you, I'm Meatball," I would say, you know what? Maybe we don't need to meet. I mean, hi. I'll say hi, but maybe we don't need to. It doesn't need to extend beyond hi.
Can I just say, as far as the nicknames go, and maybe this might answer your question, or the question you sort of posed. I don't know that I'm totally on board with everybody needing a nickname in MMA. I think that some of these nicknames, and I won't name any because I know that I won't be able to come up with the ones that I'm thinking of. Maybe you will. But I know that a few of them, it's been like, oh, you rushed into that, didn't you? Like, you needed to come up with a nickname, and like you forced that out.
You were on a regional show, and the promoter was like, "What's your nickname?" And you're like, "I don't." And you guys hashed it out there at the sign-in table. Yeah.
All right. Like, I mean, it's kind of like people's social media handle. Like, if I went with the very first social media handle that I had when I was a teenager,
here it comes.
Well, no, it's still like I was my oldest email is angelic. Like, it's angelic followed by a bunch of numbers. And then I got on this streak of using Kate as a pun. So I was authenticate and complicated, and now it's sophisticated. So I'm kind of keeping that, but it's been an evolution of things.
Right. Yes.
So I think that sometimes, as far as the nickname goes, some people kind of get caught up in, oh my gosh, I have to figure out how to market myself right now, and they spit something out, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Okay,
and
two things I'm going to say. There could be a hell of a story behind this. I don't know the story, and here's why I'm saying that. Because my daughter has the worst nickname that anyone could have. I gave it to her. There's a reason I gave it to her. I will tell you all what her nickname is now. I'm trying to break her of this nickname because she's going to a new daycare, and I don't want her to call. She self-identifies by this nickname because I call her so much. So the story is this. My great-grandmother, her nickname was Pigeon. So I call my daughter Pigeon to remember my great-grandmother, which is a horrible nickname because a pigeon's a dirty animal. But that's besides the point.
I think it's cute.
It is. But my point is that if Molly McCann's nickname was Pigeon, I would think that was silly as well. So my point is that there might be a story behind Meatball, like there's a story behind Pigeon. So I'm not trying to make, if Molly McCann's grandmother passed away and she used to make her meatballs, I'm sorry, Molly. I'm just saying that this is my stance on it. And real quick, as a disclaimer, if you're more interested in the breakdown of these fights than the conversation that Kate and I just had, you are in the wrong podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about nicknames more than,
more than what actually happened. The fact that Molly got outclassed.
Yes, if that's what you're tuning in for, then you should check out me and Cameron or somebody else. All right, let's get to it because let's get back to it, I should say. Here's where I'm going to draw another parallel between two cards. The card on Wednesday had a gentleman by the name of Mounir Lazzez, and he fought Abdul, Razak, Alhassan.
That fight. Here's
my level of connectivity for you, right? Here's the connective tissue between the two cards. Mounir Lazzez, I think, is a more complete fighter, but our man Rafael Fiziev, who was in The Matrix, listen, I got a chair that I'm sitting in, and I can pull off what Fiziev did when that guy threw that kick in his head twice. And I can kind of lean back and do the Fiziev in a chair. This dude was in a fight. Someone threw a head kick at him. He went back like Neo, came back up, and I think kicked him in the leg, which is even crazier. Dodging the kick is the begining of the thing. The fact that he came back with a strike.
With a layout.
So let's talk about these two guys because this is recency bias. So, this is the kind of show where we give these guys title shots off one good performance. But what do you think about these guys individually? I mean, Lazzez looked to be more complete, but they're both a lot of fun.
Lazzez, I had him picked to win. And then in the first 30 seconds, it was, oh no. He ate a lot, but he was real tough and he's smiling in the first minute. And I think that the word that was used most often in that fight is he's just so composed. He's just so composed. And it was true. He was. But you gotta give the upper hand a little bit to the Matrix for the entertainment factor. I mean, that dude's going to have memes. And that seems to be one of the things is if you can capture the internet's attention, all of a sudden you're taken to a different level, not just because of your performance, but because of the comedy that's there. But funny side story about that little move that he did. I played a part in a play in high school. It was Midsummer Night's Dream. I was Puck, who's the fairy. And there we kind of choreographed it so that one of the other actors was acting like he had some sort of telekinetic power over me. And I actually had this moment where from behind me, he goes like this and yanks my head back. And I pulled that move and then spun myself around. And my teacher made it a point to announce to every class that he had the next day how cool that was. So I have to give the edge to that move because I related just a teen. I can't do it anymore. I was, back when I was 14, 15 years old. But that was fun. That was very fun to watch.
So I need to get to this Davis and Figueiredo, Joseph Benavidez fight. But hold on, before we do that, I want to talk about this kid, Chimaev, because he put a beating on John Phillips that was, 124 strikes to 2. And the reason why I'm bringing him up with Lazzez, with Fiziev, and now Chimaev, before we get to because you said something that sparked something in my brain to get to the Davis and Figueiredo Benavidez fight, but I want to wait on that for a second. But so we have Chimaev, 7-0. Looks like a mix between Dominic Reyes and Khabib Nurmagomedov. John Phillips lands. Listen, I told Cameron on the recap show, it was by the grace of God that kid got a Darce choke because it was going to get uglier from there, right? I'm looking at the stats on ESPN and they do the thing where they do the hot zones of where you got hit. This kid looks like he sat in the sun. His face is so red. The rest of his body's normal. So when you see these guys, and this is recency bias, I want a little bit of a insight into you. How serious do you take them? How much do you lean into the recency bias title of this podcast, where you're just like, I can't wait to see, Lazzez fighting Kamaru Usman. How seriously can we take these performances? They're just really amazing performances.
Okay. This is
How do you reel it in?
This is going to sound kind of hypocritical because I go on and on in my own videos about how important it is to watch the prelims and how great they can be and how great some of the fighters on the undercard are, or even lower in the main card, because of the performances. However, it's still several fights in before I fully jump on someone's train, so to speak. I was not like let's take Johnny Walker as an example. Dude came out like a bolt of lightning. Everyone was with it. And while I was like, yep, let's go follow him on Instagram, let's see what he does, I was not on that hype train, and probably rightly so, because then we saw him against Corey Anderson, and it's like, okay, you still have a ways to go as far as not just, you have the raw talent, but you don't quite have the experience level. You don't quite have the fight IQ that's going to take you to that next level. So the reason that I love the prelims and the reason that I love watching UFC debuts is the same reason that I don't quite put as much stock into these fighters right away. It's because the disparity between the fighters, the two fighters that are fighting, the lower you go on the card, the bigger it gets often. So one fighter is marching in there with something to prove. And that can often result in a really amazing performance. Everything just kind of lines up. They're zeroed in. They know what they have to do, and they just go for it. So you see these absolutely incredible performances, and then 2, 3, 4 fights go by, and maybe they're 2 and 3. Maybe they got beat pretty well by a veteran. Some of the steam kind of lets out. So I give it a few fights before I start really jumping on anyone's train.
And the example here would be someone like Uriah Hall, right? And
Yeah.
Uriah Hall is someone who you realize that in as much as you think this game is below the shoulders, it's above the shoulders in a lot of ways. And in your preparation and what you do, I'm going to give you a kind of tortured analogy here, which is Sundays, right? We're recording this show on a Sunday, and let's talk about Sundays. Sundays for this reason. I have, in my vast lifetime, been at many bars on many Saturday nights, and I've had many drinks with many guys who talked a lot of stuff on Saturday nights. And I was like, wow, this guy's pretty smart, or he seems like he has it together. Met guys, friends I knew, right? People say a lot of things on Saturday nights, and they do a lot of things on Saturday nights. Fights happen on Saturday nights. What do you do Sunday morning? The same guy that I was talking in the bar with on Saturday night might sleep till 2 on Sunday. So he's not exactly as plugged in as you would like to think he is. So yeah, Saturdays are important. Sundays are important as well. So I think that sometimes we get ahead of ourselves with these guys because there's a lot you can't see on a Saturday night. You can't see how his opponent's coming in, where he's at in his career. We talked about, and we'll transition right to this now because it's the perfect time, and I'm trying to become the king of transitions. Kelvin Gastelum. When you look at Kelvin Gastelum's career, and I'll take it a step further, Jack Hermansson. When you look at Jack Hermansson's career, a couple of fights ago, we were talking about, should this guy be challenging for a title and this, that, and the other, and how serious should we take him? Then he runs into Jared Cannonier, and it's kind of a wrap. But if you look at the run that Hermansson was on, it was a lot of it was a lot of guys that you didn't know where they were in their careers. Right. So if you look at, let's take a look at the quote unquote Hermansson run, right? So the Hermansson run was Talis Latis, Gerald Mershart, David Branch, Jacare Souza. That's the 4 that he won in a row. after he'd lost to Thiago Santos, right? So
Right.
Talis Latis, he went 3 rounds with. Talis Latis fought Anderson Silva 100 years ago, right? So he's barely a guy that you would measure yourself against. He beats Gerald Meerschaert and David Branch in the first round. Meerschaert might be too young. David Branch is too old. Then he goes to unanimous decision with Jacare Souza. Who the hell knows what's going on with Jacare? He's a 205-pounder. He's an 85-pounder. He was a stud in Bellator however long ago. Then he fights a guy that we feel like we really know something about in Jared Cannonier. And he loses.
Yeah.
Okay? And then he fights Gastelum and wins. So I'm going to transition from Hermansson to Gastelum in this sense. Gastelum is just a guy who fights to the level of his competition. He always has. And when you expect little from him, he gives you a lot. And when you expect a lot from him, he gives you a little. And I just don't think that I know what to do with Kelvin Gastelum. He has a lot of Johnny Hendricks in him.
I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth, because his fight against Adesanya was one of the best fights I've ever seen. I mean, it was just a battle. And then his fight against Darren Till, I'm going, I did not expect this to go this way. Like, I really, really didn't. And then last night, he loses even faster in a I don't know enough about grappling to say this correctly, but in a heel hook that almost looks like an accident. Like, that did not look planned by any means. It didn't look like Hermansson set that up. It was kind of it was an escape out of a little bit of a scramble, but it was just there, and he capitalized on it and won. So, kudos to him. Not trying to take anything away from Hermansson, but it looked almost like more of a mistake on Gastelum's part than some ridiculous planning on Jack's part. I do not really know what to do with him at this point. I mean, if I were Kelvin, I'd probably take a step back, maybe for a year. Kind of get yourself recentered, figure out exactly what it is that you need to do, because it seems like in the last 2 fights he just has not been in the right headspace, and I'm wondering if the fight against Adesanya kind of took something out of him. Like, he laid everything out in that fight, and to give absolutely everything that you've got and come away with a loss, that's got to mess you up a little bit. And he just hasn't looked like the same guy in the cage and out of it since then. So yeah, I would probably take a little bit of a break, not necessarily stop training, but like just kind of step back a little bit.
Well, so he's an overachiever, and he doesn't pass the eye test, in the sense that when you see a guy, when you walk into a gym, in my opinion, you should be able to walk or look around the entire gym and say, I can tell you what weight each of these guys fights at by the way they're built, because that's the way middleweights are built. That's the way welterweights are built. And there will be some exceptions, but typically guys are built a certain way in divisions, and they all look similar because that's the way you have to look to be successful. So already he's bucking that trend, right? By saying I'm short for the division, and I'm thick. So already he has that going for him. And in what potentially will be the one thing that you never saw coming when I started this sentence, Kate, let's talk about the haircut. Because this haircut, if anything ever has tempted the MMA gods, it was this haircut. Is it a nice haircut? It sure is. But to walk into a cage, you're already too short for the division. You're already a little thick for the division. And you got the balls to bring that haircut into the cage. I said last night that he looked like an LA waiter who was trying to be an actor, and I can't do it. I can't do it with that haircut. I like it as a haircut, but I just think sometimes certain things give you an indication of what someone is going through. And you're like, when they say, why is this 50-year-old guy got a sports car? Well, it's been life crisis. Why is this guy started getting tattoos? Why, all these things give you a peek into the psyche of someone. I think that Kelvin Gastelum's haircut told us more about that fight than. And listen, in fairness, let me clear one thing up before you, the defender, attacked his haircut. But
Sure.
that submission was early in the fight,
Mm-hmm.
and they were both dry, and it's a rare submission, meaning that it's maybe something you don't practice getting out of all the time. And it was a solid submission. I mean, Hermansson put his foot behind Kelvin's butt to prevent him from rolling. He did a lot of things right.
Sure.
But my question to you is about this haircut. Let's get into it.
Okay. I do need to say I have two things to say on that. I'm not necessarily going to state what I thought about it, but it was the first thing that I noticed. More or less because he chose to use a white hairband, which I'm going, just use a black one. Then I won't see it as fast. But it was the very first thing I noticed. But the other thing that I want to say is Ricky Simone and Tim Elliott were both rocking a mullet in their previous fights. Not previous fights, but the fight before their last fights. Both took losses, pretty disappointing losses too.
Right.
Both got a haircut.
Okay. Both
came back to win their next fights. So, what I say to Kelvin about that haircut is maybe go get it cut.
Maybe all his answers are in the hairdresser's chair. Is that what
maybe go get it cut. I don't know about that hair.
It's not even that it was a bad haircut. I want to be very clear about this. It's not even that I didn't like the haircut. Well, it did present some problems with do you get a haircut that works for being in a cage when you got to do a top pony, and he's got some things happening. But here's the larger issue. Okay, I am a guy who is as salt and pepper as they come, right? And I made a decision very early on that I will not color my hair. I think it's just not for me. I don't think it's something that you should. You either know if you're that guy or you're not. I'm not that guy.
Right.
So, but my point is if all of a sudden I showed up around my friends with my hair colored, the first thing everybody would be was "Hey, something up? Did you?
Yeah.
Are you on the lam? Why is your hair colored?" So I guess.
Are you doing okay?
Yeah. Do you have warrants? Why is your hair colored? So
right.
That's what I think that when I saw that cut, I was like, "Hey, man, everything cool? What's up with the new?"
You all right?
So that's to me where that it threw me as odd. So what do you like? What do you like for Kelvin next, other than the salon chair? Cameron wants him to go back to 170. I think he loves carbs or whatever it is. He doesn't want to be 170.
I think he should. I mean,
he's a better fit.
He's a small middleweight. And at the risk, I don't want to sound insulting, but he has room to be a welterweight. He does. And I don't know why he doesn't give it a shot. Maybe he just thinks that, he just feels really good at middleweight, but when you take 3 pretty big losses, it's time to shake things up and do something different. So, like I said, maybe take a year away, maybe decide whether or not you can get the diet in order and shave a bit off. Try something new. You never know.
Well, Nasrat Haskbarat is the guy that they say looks like Kelvin Gastelum. And to the extent where they call him...
does. Oh, my gosh.
Well, here's the thing, though. To the extent where they call him the mini Kelvin Gastelum, here's a piece of advice. And please, Kelvin, if you hear this, don't take it the wrong way. Maybe you should be the mini Kelvin Gastelum. Maybe you should look like Nasrat. I mean, maybe that's the play. Just try.
Maybe you don't know. You don't know until you try, and he's got to try. He's got to try something.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to the and get back a little bit serious to the 125-pound division of UFC. Let's start with Deiveson Figueiredo and Joseph Benavidez. And I hear you do a sigh. And Kate, I'm telling you, if your plan here is to talk about how great a guy Joseph Benavidez is, I'm just going to take my earbuds out now and walk away and just let you have that monologue, because this whole notion that this guy who has got completely waxed by Deiveson Figueiredo twice, and that should be wiped away because Benavidez is a nice guy. And let me tell you what I really hate. Since we're going, you want some hot takes? I got some for you. If I got to see one more tweet, that Joseph Benavidez is already a champion because he's married to Megan O'Leary, please, come on. There are 50,000 girls in New Jersey that look like Megan O'Leary. She is pretty, but come on. He's a fighter. He went out to fight for the belt twice. He lost. Let's not give him participation trophies. All right?
Twice.
He should be very happy that he's married to Megan O'Leary. That is not what makes him a champion. It might make him a great guy. It might make him happy. But let's not give Joseph Benavidez this consolation. We're treating this guy like he's 6 years old and he just lost his first soccer match. Like, come on.
Okay, I do agree. I do agree, and I do want to drop the Megan O'Leary bit because I don't think that should ever be anybody's shtick. You know, to go on and on about their partner. It's like, you're a fighter. Like, that's what we care about.
Well, it's just because we know her. Every fighter's
right. Exactly.
Wife, I'm sure, you know.
Oh yeah. Have you seen Cody Garbrandt's wife? Holy smoke show!
And when he lost 3 in a row, it wasn't like Cody's still a champ.
Because of his wife.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I do wholeheartedly agree with you there. I think that what we're seeing here is the same thing that we saw with Masvidal. Fighters who have these diehard fans, those fans are never just going to take the loss and roll over. They're going to do everything that they can to spin it into a positive. And I get it. I totally get it. You know, your guy lost. It sucks. And poor Joe has lost his chance at a title 5 times. 5 times. You normally ask me the question, you know, who's peaked.
Things are a little different this week, for sure.
I know, but I'm just gonna say this one was my answer for that. Had we gone in that direction, because I'm going. Yeah, he might be a great guy with a lot of fans, but sorry, not sorry, guys. He just ain't it. He's just not. I mean, I know that the last fight, there was a weight controversy. So it was very easy for a lot of people to go, well, you know, weight was missed, so it doesn't count. So we have to run it back. And okay, fine. You know, whatever. We'll run it back.
It's been run back.
Not because there's almost no one else in that division or anything. But fine, we'll do it again. And he was definitively beaten. I mean, 3 knockdowns. And what was it? 5 submission attempts?
Yeah, he was all over him.
You can't get any more definitive than that.
Well, we've talked in the past about how do you score these fights and how do you score that round. I tweeted out, what do you even score that round
10-5?
If it goes to the judge? Yeah, like what is there to do? And listen, guys, I'm not trying to come down on Joseph Benavidez. I get the nice guy Joe bit, and it's fine. Nice guy Joe is what got him the rematch when he got waxed in the first one. That and the weight. It was like, all right, we want Benavidez to have a shot, and all of it, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of over. And he talked about maybe wanting to go out on a win. let me tell you something. The oldest saying in the fight game, and it started in boxing, is fighters don't retire, the ring retires them. And the reason the ring retires them is because a guy like Joseph Benavidez takes that kind of an ass whipping and says, well, I want to go out on a win. So then what do you do, man? You're either at the top of the food chain or you're not. So now you're going to fight a guy. How would you feel being the next guy booked to fight Benavidez when he wants to go out on a win? It's like, well, who am I supposed to be? I'm supposed to be the guy that you're going to go out on a win with? That would piss me off even more. And that's what happens. Nobody wants to be someone's, farewell tour. And I think that's what Benavidez is setting up for himself. Now, we talked about Gastelum's hair. We talked about Molly McCann's nickname. It's time to
We're just coming for everybody today.
It's time to talk about Deiveson Figueiredo's Twitter account. Because before this fight, he was tweeting at Megan O'Leary. And the first thing was, where's Megan O'Leary? And then he kind of borrowed from Derek Lewis and said, where's Megan O'Leary's fine ass at? I'm gonna tell you, it's cringy. I'm gonna tell you something. I don't hate it. And do I hate it from a standpoint of it's a douchey thing to do? Yes. But I don't hate it from the fact that if this is your shtick, that you're calling people out on Twitter 40 minutes before you fight them, or their wives or significant. I mean, you got to lean into it. I'm saying that if that's his thing, I can't imagine any other way that I was talking to Craig the other day about something I'd seen about Brock Lesnar WWE, and they said the reason they don't let Brock Lesnar talk is because monsters don't talk in the movies. And Brock Lesnar's a monster. So the play is either you say someone is such a wrecking machine that they don't have to say anything, which you could make that argument. Some of these guys that don't promote themselves well, I think that you can make and I think this is the example I used. You can make an excuse that Kamaru Usman should do that. Less is more. When people say stuff about Kamaru Usman, he just goes, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to sit here and talk to you about all the things I'm going to do to this guy? Or do you want me to just go kick his ass like everybody else I fought? Like, that's the play. Less is more with Kamaru Usman, potentially. So my point is that should Deiveson Figueiredo, as cringy and listen, we talk about Henry Cejudo. He was super cringy, but at least we knew he owned it. At least we knew that he was pulling the strings behind all of this. Some guys are cringy and they don't, there's a lack of self-awareness there.
Sure.
Do you think, take away the fact that you hate the move from a woman's perspective, or even not a woman's perspective, but just that it's douchey, should Figueiredo lean into this of calling out whoever?
I don't think there's any other choice. Once you go with this kind of thing, you better, slam your foot on that gas pedal and just go with it. I think that if he were to apologize or to backpedal, there goes all the credibility. Like, at least if you're gonna be an asshole, stand by it. If you're gonna be the bad guy, be the bad guy. And I think he was trying to be the bad guy from the beginning. I mean, when he won the first fight, he was celebrating like he won the belts. And I remember sitting there going, what are you dancing around for? You missed weight. Like, you're going to have to do this again. This fight was a nothing win for you. But I think he was kind of trying to establish what kind of thing he was going for. And he wanted to be the bad dude. It's like, all right.
You can look at it like, in a way, he was sort of dancing on Benavidez' grave in the first fight, right? That's the thing.
Exactly.
That's what he's trying to conjure up, right? And it's like, I think for me, because look at Colby Covington. He went all that time and then did the Candace Owens interview and completely just wiped it all away. Like, I had to do this because I'm really the victim here. I know I say a lot of, horrible things, but I'm really the victim here. I think that what you said is the genius of being hated is that, much like Floyd Mayweather, okay? If you are Joseph Benavidez, all your fans want to watch your fight, okay? Everybody that loves you wants to watch your fight. If you're Deiveson Figueiredo, all your fans want to watch your fight, and all Joseph Benavidez fans want to watch you get beat. And all other MMA fans want, so you get everybody. Everybody's under the tent because they're like, now, you have to deal with the fact that when the check comes and you get beat, you got to pay it. right? You got to eat some crow, and that's what's for dessert. But I think that he needs to lean into this. Now,
I agree.
Now, I won't get us in any trouble here. Maybe I will. In saying that, the other fighter on this card who's sort of making some overtures towards potentially fighting Davis and Figueiredo, Askarov, he's pretty much legally deaf. So I guess, no, I can't make that joke. Anyway, Askarov defeated Alexander Pantoja. I'll make that joke not on the podcast. So anyway, he defeated Alexander Pantoja and by unanimous decision. He looks like, everybody gets compared to Khabib now that likes to have a lot of control time and closest distance. The likely next fighter to fight Figueiredo is Brandon Moreno, but he had a draw with Askarov. So when you watched Askarov fight Alexander Pantoja, did you see championship level stuff here, or did you just?
Yeah, I think so. First, I have to ask you though: did you lose me? Because my stream, you've been frozen for like the last minute.
No, I didn't.
Okay, then it must just be on my end. So I'm not going to worry about it. Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I said, I'm not really the best judge of who's a champ, and I can't do MMA math or pick fights to save my life. But I think he looked pretty good, and I think that the smart thing to do from the UFC's perspective would be to start, hyping him up a little bit, because that flyweight division needs more life in it for sure.
I agree. I think it's time to just get these guys going. I don't want to say we wasted time with Figueiredo and Benavidez, but I am a little upset with Figueiredo that we even had to fight this fight again. If he'd have made weight, it would have been a wrap. Benavidez would have either retired or not retired back in the day, and we would have moved on. So I think these guys need to get their shot. We need to get this thing moving. I have been talking a lot lately about, Petr Yan fighting Volkanovski, and should Figueiredo fight Yan. And I know people hate that, and I get it. But, if you're the UFC, you have to make a decision of, do you continue to let these champions that you have that don't really have a name fight big names and give guys title shots they don't deserve, like Jose Aldo got one, Dominic Cruz got one. Do you do that to raise their profile, or do you just let these divisions play themselves out? And, the UFC got lucky in the fact they had George St. Pierre back in the day, who was a big star on his own, and he could run through whoever the number one contender was, and the fight would still sell. And, you take that for granted when you have it, that your star is going to sell no matter who the B side is. When your star is the A side, when Kamaru Usman fights, he's the B side, unfortunately. He was the B side against Jorge Masvidal. He'd be the B side against Colby Covington. So you have to bring an A side to the fight.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do that with GSP. So I guess the question becomes, do you just try and build an A side, hoping that you might get it, until, look at Figueiredo, give him a wink and say, hey, why don't you hop on Twitter and maybe we can build you into an A side, or what do? Do you try and find?
I mean, I think it's kind of a combination of letting it play out and building it up a little bit. There's no secret that if you watch the only thing, I don't have Twitter. I have Instagram. That's it. I think my Twitter posts automatically from my Instagram. So I pay zero attention to Twitter. So I can speak from watching the UFC's Instagram account. You can kind of tell which ones prior to a fight, which ones they're pulling for. They're not always shy about their bias. And I think that maybe just giving some of these guys a little bit of a push is really all you need to do, because people would get behind some of these guys if they knew who they were. But as we've discussed before, not everybody watches the undercard. Not everybody watches anything besides the co-main and the main event. A lot of people just tune in for those fights. So they have no idea who these people are. All it would take is, a couple strategic mentions, and all of a sudden people are going, oh, who is that? Maybe I should pay attention to this person. And not to say that the UFC is entirely responsible for building these people's careers up, but in this case, yeah, maybe give a couple of them a little bit of a push, because you can't always depend on the Twitter play to go the way that you want it to.
Right. Well, so if you guys are wondering so Kate does Twitter. I mean, Kate does Instagram and I do Twitter. If you're wondering what the difference is between Instagram and Twitter, I'll tell you. The difference between Instagram and Twitter is Instagram is like a day at the beach, and Twitter's like a day at the beach the first day back after someone was attacked by a shark. And like, we're not really sure if we should go in the water yet, but it's a nice day. We should go to the beach. We haven't been to the beach in like a week, and you're not really sure if everything's okay yet. That's the difference. If I was giving any advice, I would say get on Instagram and live a happy life. Let's finish this thing up with Joe Duffy, who once upon a time defeated Conor McGregor. On this day,
just watched that.
On this day, he was defeated by a guillotine choke by Joel Alvarez. It was Duffy's last fight. He's hung him up. I don't know if Conor McGregor had any indication that Duffy was going to retire, but he was getting high on some boat. Maybe he was celebrating Duffy's retirement. Conor was at least on the low end consuming marijuana. On the high end, there was some residue on his hands. We'll let the USADA and the authorities take care of that one. But so Conor,
I ain't touching that.
Conor was happy Joe Duffy's leaving. But, Duffy was brought in, obviously, because he beat Conor McGregor. And if there's a chance that Duffy goes on a run, you can at some point down the road put him in there with McGregor again. It never materialized for Duffy. Is this his legacy? Is someday he's just going to tell his grandchildren, that Conor McGregor, I beat him once?
I can say that if I were Duffy, that would be what I would say every day, all day.
And there you have it. That's the hottest take we have left. Listen, guys, we got a lot accomplished here. We talked about Kelvin Gastelum's hair. We talked about Molly McCann's nickname. And I think somewhere along the lines,
I'm sorry, Molly. I love you. I do.
We may have mentioned some fights somewhere along. So, as usual, if you like this show, please follow us on all of our social media. Kate can be followed at SophistiKated_MMA on the good mental health social media platform, which is Instagram. I can be followed on the cesspool of Twitter at SM Cornerman. And as always, all of these takes are only good for the next week. See you next week, guys. Peace.